Dave's going to demo for us the admin console.
Okay.
And whenever you're ready, take it away, my friend.
All right, thank you. Yeah, my name is Dave Hansen. I'm here with Dan Christensen. We work on the admin development team. Just a quick update. The hockey game, Canada is up 1-0 with about 5 minutes left in the second period. So the U.S. almost has them exactly where they want them if the game goes like yesterday. So we'll keep an eye on that, though. So just a very, very brief introduction to the new administration for Windermere. We have done away with the Console One plugins, and we have come up now with a new admin service. It's a RESTful admin service that we'll be using, and so it's an entirely new admin package, and it just offers a tremendous amount of flexibility that we have not had in the past. With that, we're just going to we're going to go through a really quick installation process just to show you how it works. The install process now, as it is pretty minimal compared to what it has been in the past. It basically goes through the process of laying down the files, and it will start up the new admin service on the back end, and then all the configuration is done through that. And so on my machine here right now, we are basically at that point where we would have finished the install. So my admin service is running in an unconfigured mode, and there are a couple of icons put on the desktop. And so if we click on the install icon, which will take us into our configuration page, it communicates with the admin service on the back end and brings you into the installation configuration menu. So for all of our customers going forward, they would be using the upgrade on an existing domain or post office to go through the wizard steps to handle that. But we're just really quickly going to show a new GroupWise installation setup. And so the information that we gather is going to give you a more complete system than it has in the past. It allows for the system name, the internet domain name that you want to configure. So by default in a system now, we do set up the internet addressing, which we have not done in the past. So this is a new feature. It asks for the IP address. I'm just going to go with localhost on this, and just because that's how I do things, it's easy for me. We give it a path, and I can take all the defaults if I like. I'm going to change those. We default the languages, set that up, and then you have the option of creating an internet agent, a GUIA, and a post office as part of this initial installation. And so we're going to go ahead and set up the GUIA, and we'll give it the same host name or SMTP host name that we did for the internet addressing configuration. Post office, we'll just give it a quick default name, and we'll put it underneath. Excuse me. We will put it underneath where our domain is located. We also have the ability to set up a document viewer agent by default. I'm going to skip past that for right now for this installation, but setting that up would also have that configured in the brand new system. One of the changes that we've had with the Windermere is, as Dean has highlighted before, is that we have the ability now to run a GroupWise system using eDirectory as a source directory, using Active Directory as a source directory, or running without a directory at all. And so as part of that now, we control our own access control settings, and as part of this installation, the user will have to define a system administrator account, which is kind of the default system administrator. We'll talk more about how delegation happens on this as well. So we'll give it a weak password, because those are the easiest ones for a demo. And yes, I really do want to use that. Okay, we get a quick view of the summary, and go ahead and click Finish. And now this is going to take just a few minutes. During this process, the admin service on the back end is configuring the domain directory structure and the domain database, configuring the GUIA, It's setting up the post office directory structure and database, and it is also setting up the agents, all of the default MTA, the default GUI, and the default POA to run as Windows services. So this process just takes a couple of minutes. It's actually fairly quick. And as soon as those steps are all done, this will give us a status screen saying that we're ready then to proceed on into the admin console. One other step that does take place as part of this is the new admin service gets its configuration from the domains, the MTA's configured from its settings. So it knows its admin port and its IP address. And so often as this is completing as well, the admin service will have to do a restart as well to load up with that new configuration. So that's one other reason why this takes just a few minutes to do.
Bring up the Windows services and show the services as they're created.
So I do have, this is the, just running in a console window, this is the admin service running in one window. And, okay, there we're done. And now, just really quick, I just want to show you now what's been configured on the back end. We have some command line utilities that get installed to help with configuration and troubleshooting. One of those is the service controller, or the service, which is the SE. So it goes through now, and this shows now the Windows services that have been configured for this system. So those are all set up and ready to go. And clicking on the admin console, clicking on this will take us right into our administrative console. And for this, and one of the things, the reason it's not able to connect right now is I changed the IP address away from the main name that was used. And one other delay that can also be happening is, okay, there we go. The admin service has been able to restart, and it's up and going now. One other security measure that we took with this as well is that as we create a new system, all of the admin services are running in Ssl mode. And so when we generate a new system, the primary domain acts as a certificate authority to generate certificates for all of these agents. And so it should be running in SSL, and the agents communicating between themselves will also be communicating SSL. So now using that super admin password that we configured, we get to log in. The default, this is the new, the default screen for the new administration console. It comes up and it gives you a system overview of the agents and their status. As you can see, our services, the MTA GUI and POA, they're all up and running right now. We have a green status bar on those. And
let's hop into the POA real quick and show the changes to the SSL being enabled. So if we pop into the, let's get into the POA.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
So we pop into the SSL settings, you can see that the admin service generated an SSL certificate and key file. And if we pop into agent settings, you'll see that some of the agent settings, that allowed us to enable SSL basically in all of the places where it's supported. So MTP is over SSL, client server has SSL enabled, SOAP is now enabled by default and SSL is turned on. As well as the HTTP interface has SSL enabled. So right out of the box, as you create a new post office or POA, we turn SSL on for everything with these new generated certificates.
One other note about the SSL settings, we do default to these, but if our customers do have their own purchased certificates that they do want to use, they can replace those. as well. But that would be totally up to them in that. One other thing you'll notice too is that with the IP address that we set, we do a bind exclusive on those, and sometimes, like the connection problem I had initially, because it's only connecting, it's binding exclusive to that IP address, it wouldn't accept the default address that was being passed in. So depending on what the customer's needs are, generally for my testing, I always come in and I have to unbind just to make it easy for me.
We generally don't recommend that you set up an email server that only listens on localhost. That's not very useful.
Yeah, it's wonderful for testing and development. Production systems would probably not be a good choice. Okay, so we'll save that out and close that. So really quickly, we just gave you a view of the, or a quick glance at the overview page. As the system grows, as you add new domains, new post offices, those will all be, you'll see new windows group up in here. The agents are always grouped by their domain, and so as you add a new domain, a new window is here, and you have the choice of configuring this page, which windows display, which windows don't. So that can help you kind of keep a quick overview of your system at a glance. And Dean said that there are a couple of questions.
There are a few questions that I think we'll address right now, and as they're coming in, see if we can get those answered. The first question is, what is the web server for this web administration console, both on Windows and on Linux?
So we use an embedded copy of Jetty, and by embedded I mean we've got it built into the code. It's not a separate instance that we drop our web app into. We actually drive and control it directly from our executable jar files, and that's both on Windows and on Linux.
So what you're saying, Dan, is you don't install into your traditional web server?
We don't.
That
is correct.
All right, the next question is, what is the expiration on the auto-generated SSL certificate? How long does it last?
The certificates are issued with a 10-year validity.
Thank you. And somewhat related, I believe, is, and what is the ORG-CA certificate authority, I believe?
ORG-CA certificate authority?
I think he says ORG-CA. I don't know if that was on the screen or...
So the certificate authority, we could pop in and take a look at the certificates that are generated by default, if that could help. Do we want to, where are you installed?
Agents.
Do we know what system?
It'll probably be...
What was the most recent one?
Yeah.
No, it's 221. There we go. So if we look at the CA cert and key here, it gets auto-generated, and we use a subject name that is, the CN will be the system name -CA, and the organization is always the system name. So Dave named the system Demo 1. That's going to be the subject name. We do individual keys, so we'll look at the admin certificate for the POA. It gets issued by that system CA, but then if we look at the subject, it kind of uses a hierarchy that identifies its placement within the system. So the organization is always the system name, and then we are an organizational unit of the domain, an organizational unit of the PO, an organizational unit of the POA name, which by default is always going to be POA, but could be modified for different ones. An OU of admin differentiates these certificates from the agent certificates, and then the CN is always going to match the host name that was configured for the agent. I hope that answered the question.
Excellent. Next question. After original installation, can the original admin user be disabled after designating other users as having full rights to be more in compliance with some regulatory and security types of directives?
It cannot be disabled. And one of the important distinctions about the super admin user is that the superadmin user is able to log in with nothing else running in the system. So any other user that you designated as an administrator, we do authentication for that user by actually connecting to the POA and using its authentication mechanism. So if your POA is configured to do Ldap, we'll do an Ldap authentication for the user. Well, the problem is for admin, if your system is down or in a state where things aren't working and you need to log in to fix something, you can't do that with any user other than the system administrator, because any of the other administrators would require POAs running to do the authentication. And so for that reason, we felt it was kind of important to always have at least one user that you could log in with, no matter what state your system was in.
Right. On the reports that you can generate, and I think did you already start to demo some of the reports?
No, we'll be talking about those in just a few minutes.
Several of these questions are kind of along the lines of that, so we'll hold those because you may get to those as you do the demo. There are some other, however, certificate types of questions that we'll take now. Will it work with wildcard SSL certificates? Is that a specific enough question, or is that?
So the agents. So there are two different types of certificates being used here. There are the certificates that we generate for the admin service, which are used both for the SSL that you see in your browser connecting to the admin service, as well as they're used for kind of an internal security model as different admin services within your GroupWise system talk to each other. Those certificates aren't meant to be replaced. And so the answer is no, we don't support wildcard certificates there because we don't generate wildcard certificates. We're generating certificates that we use internally. Now the agent certificates that get generated for the POA and the MTA and the GUIA, we generate ones by default there. Those aren't wildcard certificates, but if you purchased a wildcard certificate and dropped it into the place for the POA, the MTA, or the GUIA, yes, those should work.
And how do you regenerate a certificate if needed?
So to regenerate the certificate, again, so two different things that we could be talking about. The admin service certificates that we use kind of internally for our security model. We have a command line utility that allows you to regenerate the CA certificate or regenerate or kind of reissue a certificate to any endpoint in the system. So if you do a GWAdmin util CA, you'll see that there are various options for regenerating the certificate authority or reissuing a certificate for any node. Now, if we're talking about the agent certificates, so if I wanted to come into, say, my MTA and wanted to give it a different certificate, or say I upgraded from a previous version of GroupWise where it didn't have one of these certificates and I wanted to give it one, I can just come in here, hit Generate Certificate, I give it a password to use, hit OK. It's going to talk to the certificate authority. It's going to generate a private key, generate a certificate signing request, submit it, and get a new certificate issued that it stores and configures the MTA or POA with. And we do that all with, I guess that would be 2 clicks there, generate, and then, OK.
Excellent. I think we'll move on in your demo game.
Okay. I did notice there was one other question about installing this just on the Windows workstation, just for a training purpose. And that's basically what we are showing here. This is just my laptop, and we have a full installation. As Dean mentioned, we can run with or without directories. And in this case, we've started out with there's no directory backend interface, and we can run completely standalone on this box. It's running all the MTA and POA as well. So it is possible for training and testing to be able to do that. You may have a few limitations with that, but you can do that. So now our system is up and going here. Just really quick, I want to go ahead and just add our first new default user. Multiple ways to do this. The easiest way is just, as you see on the left-hand panel, these are system navigation or system contexts for these objects. And so clicking on users gives us a list of all the system users. And we don't have a user in the system yet. So I'm just going to define one quick system, or excuse me, a user called user1, and I'm intentionally going to leave the first name and last name blank on this object, and I'll show you why. I could fill those out, and that would be fine. And I assign the post office, and that user is now generated. I go ahead and change the password on that user, and that user is then able, in just a minute, as soon as that replication takes place, that user will be able to be logged in using GroupWise authentication. And so right now we have a system set up. It's a standalone system. We've got users set up that can log in and send mail, and we're good to go with that. One of the other important things, though, that we have done for Windermere is we still want to leverage external directories, especially eDirectory and Active Directory. And we don't want to be in the data management for these external directories, but we want to be able to leverage that data. So to be able to access those, we have a new object which references those external directories, and it's called a new directory. We do it all via Ldap, so it comes underneath the Ldap servers. But this new directory, we're going to create one, and this is going to be an Active Directory access that we're going to set up. And just really quick, I'll put this in, 194. We're going to not use SSL, so we don't need the certificate. And my administrator, so I don't typo that, and give him this password. And at this point now, we can actually even test that connection. And using those credentials and that information, we know that we can hit that Ldap server. Yeah, the one piece of information that we want to supply, though, especially for Active Directory, is a base DN. So ahead of time, I went out and set up a few users, and they reside in this context. And so that's where we'll be starting to look for users. And we are going to enable synchronization. And one other thing that we want to be able to do for this directory is we want to be able to publish email addresses. That is an optional ability. If you want to push GroupWise email addresses back into the directory, we can do that. And we do want to do that for this instance. So now we've configured an Active Directory installation that we can use to get users from. I noticed one of the questions that came through earlier was about importing or sucking information in. And so now that we've configured that directory, that shows up. If we have multiple directories, we can pick from, and then we assign the post office that we want to get those users from. And using the base demo that we put in, as long as I type that in, we do a preview. And these are the list of users that show up in that context. And I want to go ahead and just import all those users. You can exclude them if you would like, so you can pick and choose who you want to do that. But we're going to go ahead and import all those users. You
can also use an Ldap filter to be able to selectively grab users, say that may have a certain attribute or exist. Well, you could also choose a particular context. And if you had a large set of users that you want to distribute over multiple post offices, that could be useful as well. You could run the tool multiple times to one post office and say, only grab all of the users in a particular location based on an attribute in the directory and stick them there, and then run it a second time to get the other users into a different post office.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just import those users, and it's actually a pretty quick process. And at that point now, these users all have GroupWise accounts and show up in the system, and we can log in now as any one of these users. Oh, I do need to make one more change, I'm sorry, on the post office. I still need to configure Ldap authentication as being an option. And it's going to hit that, by default, that directory that we configured as the Ldap source. We do provide the option, if based on system topography and distribution, if you have local Ldap servers that you'd rather hit to do the authentication, we can define those, configure those so the POA can use a more local Ldap server if that's more advantageous.
But note that this UI has changed from previous versions of GroupWise where it was required to select Ldap servers. Right now, out of the box, it'll work automatically by looking up the directory that the user is associated with. And this UI has changed so that you're selecting a set of preferred Ldap servers if that's necessary for your topography. But even if you set nothing up here, as Dave did, you'll see that you're still able to do a login to the system.
So first off, really quick, I'm just going to log in as that first user who is a standalone user. He's not associated with any directory, and but we did give him a GroupWise password. So we go ahead and we log in as that user. Everything is fine. We can do a new mail, and we'll go ahead and just send a couple of emails. One. We'll do that one. Okay, that's all cool, and then we will go ahead and exit out as that user, and now we'll go ahead and log back in as one of the imported users that we have. And now this user, because it came from Active Directory, that did do the Ldap authentication, where the first user just did the GroupWise authentication. So we'll send a couple of more emails. Sorry. And we'll show you why that's important. Okay, so those two, we've got a little bit of stuff in the system now. We can authenticate as those users. Now, one of the things I want to show you later on is it's what Dean mentioned about doing the reports, the extended reports, and some of the most valuable data that we can get comes from the audit reports. So before we go on anymore, we're going to just really quickly run an audit. There's a few ways to do this. The easiest way to get to it is if you look at the information for a post office, you have the option to run the audit report right from the post office information menu. And so we've now sent a task off, and the POA is working on gathering that information. So while it's doing that, we're going to show one of the other things Dan mentioned about delegating administrative rights. So right now in our system we have a single super administrator, and that user has all rights to do everything in the entire system. But with Windermere, or 2014, we have added some more granular steps to delegate administration. We have the ability to add system administrators, domain level administrators, and post office administrators. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make Dan a system level administrator here, and we are going to make, we'll make me,
type in the domain.
oh, sorry. For this domain, sorry, I missed that. I'm going to make me a domain level administrator. So we will have different levels of administration ability. And so with that now, as I log in as that user, like Dan said, it's going to go through and use regular GroupWise authentication, if it's GroupWise or Ldap authentication, to authenticate as that user, and then we track that the rights associated with that user to show what they can do. So since I'm a limited rights administrator. I can only administer this domain. We're going to go ahead and log in as me. And since we're in a single domain system, the one thing that I am not going to be able to see now are the system level operations that would normally be available. It's already limited down the scope based on what I have been given rights to. And so I cannot do this. If we had a multiple domain system, I would be able to see the other domains in the system in a read-only mode, strictly information.
Note that he also doesn't have the ability to create a new domain from the screen.
Exactly.
That button is gone here.
I can, also a post office, because post offices require access to the system level to generate the certificate. You know, we have to have a system level administrator to be able to create post office as well. So that is, this is our first big step that way. We still have a lot of things that we'd like to do with this going forward and providing some roles and things, but those will not be in the 2014 release.
Dave, one kind of related question that's come into that, and somewhat related to an earlier question, but can you create additional admin equivalent users so that they can log in no matter what? I think it's that original system user that they're referring to. Can you create duplicates of that?
In 2014, no. Any other users that are given administrative rights do go through GroupWise administration. So the GroupWise system does have to be able to be running to provide that authentication for us currently. But that is definitely a feature that we could look at going forward, is to define multiple system accounts that are not tied to a GroupWise account.
And then one more kind of related question is, can you customize the super admin name? By default, it's admin. Can I name it something else?
Sure. Yeah, that's just a default value that we put in there, but you can call it anything that you would like.
And there's two ways that you can do that. One, as David walked through the initial system creation, it actually prompted him for the admin name. Like I said, by default, so we pre-populated that box with admin, but you could have changed it there. There is also an option from the command line, GW admin util set admin, that allows you to reset the admin name and password. So that also answers the question of how you would reset the password were you to ever forget that super user account.
Yep. One thing that we started with, that Dan had mentioned in another demo, is that we've actually kind of gone back to the old GroupWise 4 admin account that was available there. And so if you happen to have a system that has actually migrated up from GroupWise 4, that admin account will still be there. And so if by any stretch of the imagination you may not be able to remember that after all these years, you can use this to go in and force a set admin, or you can do it during the upgrade process as well. So yeah, one of the other questions that we had was about reporting, and there was a way to minimize this.
Just shrink the window a little bit.
Let's just do that. Okay. One of the other one of my favorite features, actually, which is very useful to me, there's two things that we have. One of them is the global search feature. Global search is completely new to 2014 and provides tremendous amount of flexibility when you're trying to find an object in the system and you only have partial information about it, or you're not sure about it. Looking up a file ID or a user by their file ID is one of those. And so in here in our list, I can see the file IDs here. But if I wanted to find out, what user owned the file ID of NCI, I type that in my global search, and it takes me to Rajesh's account. It tracks him down. This works for all sorts of objects in the system. We, on the iDomains, we called our, it works on the domains, the MTAs, it tracks those down and finds all those objects in the system.
It's a partial first name or last name.
So if we type DA, we get Dan Christensen and Dave Hansen both showing up. And this is just a real time saver. It's a real convenience, I think, for administrators to be able to navigate the system rather than hunting down to more of knowing a context that you have to do a search in.
It eliminates just pointing and clicking around the interface. Some of the other things that you can search for, if you happen to have them, the FID, like Dave mentioned, a GUID, if you happen to have a GUID, will resolve. You can put an email address in there, and it'll do an email address lookup for that user and tell you whether or not anybody resolves to that email address. You can enter in an IP address or host name, and it'll find any POAs, MTAs, or GUIAs that are running on that. So if we start typing 127,
I think that's because I had so many duplicates. There we go.
It'll show, and of course on this system that's trivial because everything has the same IP address. It'll show the agents that are running on that IP address, as well as match, any of the partial objects names. So Dave started typing demo, and immediately got both the domain object and the MTA object for that domain. You could start typing PO, and it would take them directly to the post office object. And so if you're a keyboard user, it allows you to just kind of quickly get to exactly what you're looking for without having to kind of hunt and peck with the mouse around the UI to get into various sections. One of the other things that you can do here is you can actually pull up some of the system applets as well. So we can start typing Ldap servers. I don't have any. I only have the directories. There we go. User move status, and I can pull up that applet. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're in as a domain administrator, so there are fewer things that we can pull up out of the system applets. But so if you're somewhere deep in here and you want to be able to pull up a tool without having to lose the context that you're in, I could pull up the email address, look at the tool from here without having to switch context to get to that tool.
So I personally have found this to be just a real time saver. I think the larger your system is, the more useful global search becomes. One of the other questions that we had is about the reports ability, which is new to 2014. In any of the lists, the main list that we have, you have the ability to filter by information in this list. To find out what's available or what the attributes are available, you can simply highlight into the search user list and hit Control Space, and that will show you a list of attributes that are available. And I'll show you a few more ways to get help on this because it's a long list, and knowing which is which is, well, we're going to try and provide a little more help with that. I think especially during an audit report, one of the most useful features that we will have is being able to do a report, on mailbox size. Oops. I want to find out all the users that have a mailbox size, greater than 0. And so now, because I went out and I sent those emails, I have a size on that. And just to verify this, I also do have the ability that I can still customize my columns. And mailbox size is current mailbox size. And I can add that as a column just to verify that each one of these users actually does have something. If I still had a user that had an empty mailbox, wasn't being used, it would be excluded from that. Now the cool thing is once you generate this report and you want to keep that information, there's a few things you can do. You can actually save these filters. So I can save this, and I can call it, mailbox size, and so then that will be available then in the quick pull down. If I have filters that I want to see over and over again, I can just click in there, and it will regenerate that for me all the time. And that's a tremendous feature. It should have an export. Okay. I'm going to do a quick log out and log back in as a system administrator. Okay. So now, doing that same, now you'll see that in my filters, those filters get saved according to the account of who you're logged in as. So this admin account doesn't have that filter saved, so we're going to redo it. Okay, so we have that same filter now. Now, because I'm a system administrator, I have the ability now as well to export this information into a CSV file as well. And so I can save that, and it will save that as a user CSV. It's coming from the user list, and it will save that in my downloads, and that'll be available there. So I can generate custom reports in here and be able to dump that information. Now, I wanted to just show you really quick one way to get some help on, what kind of filtering you can do in this box. If you go to the Manage Filters, there's a Help button there. And if you click on the usage instructions from that Help menu, it takes you to the docs, and it gives you some really good basic information on what kind of the common attributes that are available, as you can see, for the different object types. This isn't the complete set, but these are some of the very common ones. It also goes through how the operators are used, and grouping, and wildcards, and just different ways to help set up the filtering. I think this is a great tutorial on how to be able to access the data in GroupWise. And like I said, once you generate these reports one time, you can just save that filter, and you're good to go, and that'll be saved from then on.
It's kind of a related question to that filtering. As you save those filters, is that per user that's logged in, or is that filter shared across all the administrators?
Those filters are saved based on who you are logged in as. And so they're currently not shared. You can easily, clip those out and send them to somebody else if they want to save those as well for their, to be able to do that. One of the other things is the customizations that you make in these columns are saved based on the account you're logged in as well. So on my DR Hansen account, I had added the mailbox size to the user list, and you can see because I logged back in as the super admin, that's no longer there. And so all those customizations that you make are saved on the account you're logged in as. Did you have something on that?
I was just going to say with the filters, I mean, the great thing is it's really just a snippet of text. So sharing them as, an IM, an email, posting it to a website, we actually kind of hope that, some of our partners will help create kind of an online library with snippets of reports that are useful, that people can reference.
I think just going through there as well, one of the other settings, again, it comes from the audit information. You can track down mailbox licenses. In addition to mailbox size, you can track down their last login. That's one of the pieces of information that comes back. And so I think, in my mind, especially the information that comes back from the audit is the information. Oh, last client login time. There it is. That's going to be information that will be really helpful, especially to our people here at Novell, to be able to get back accurate information on a system and how that system is being used. Okay, really quick, one of the other things that we talked about before is when we configured that directory object, we told it that we wanted to go ahead and allow publishing emails to this directory. And so as we do that, as we make changes to the directory or to post office or to an individual object, we have the ability then to publish the email addresses for those objects back into their source directory. And so in this case, yeah, I want to go ahead and do that, and we updated it directly. I do have a remote desktop running somewhere here. So this is the source for the Active Directory objects that we took in. And so you can see now, we now have an email address set up for these people, and that is configurable. In this case, I believe I set it up to publish more than just a preferred email ID. And so in the proxy addresses, I must have canceled. Oh, no, I haven't changed that out. You do have the ability to configure what you do want published there, and that's configurable at the system. Sorry, at the system level, and this would be inherited by default by all the directories, or at a directory level, you can actually go in and override and say, I want to publish something different than the system level, and pick and choose what you want to go out there. So we do make that fairly configurable, and hopefully that'll give out the information that they want. It's very similar to the settings that we had in Console 1 and published back to eDirectory in GroupWise 2012. One last thing I wanted to show for sure is we created this first initial user as a standalone user, but we also provide the ability to associate now this standalone user and make it linked to an external user. And vice versa, we can unlink them as well. And so I can take this standalone user, which is a GroupWise only user right now, and if I decide later on that I want to associate it with an eDirectory or an Active Directory account, I can do underneath the More tab, I can do an associate, and I want to do it through the Active Directory, and it will prompt me for the administrator password to make sure that we do have all the rights that we have. And under DR Hansen Demo, I do have this extra user that I created just to be able to associate that. And so now that user has gone from being a standalone GroupWise user to an associated object. You can see the icon is now changed on that user as well, indicating that he is associated with an external directory object. And again, with that user now, I have also the ability to publish his email, and all my GroupWise email addresses that I want to will be pushed back into Active Directory and show up there. So we've gotten out of the kind of the directory management business. We don't want to be in charge of handling a lot of data in eDirectory or Active Directory anymore. But the one piece of information that we do still want to push back are the GroupWise email addresses. That is important that we make those available.
So an important point to make there is what that decision allows us to do is to not have any requirements on the schema of the directory that we tie into. So Dave didn't have to do anything ahead of time to extend the schema in Active Directory to get GroupWise to be able to talk to it. We consume a set of standard attributes from Active Directory to pull down the user information, and the only thing we write back is that email address. There are no extended GroupWise attributes that end up going back to the directory. So it makes it really quite a bit easier than it was previously to interact with the directory, because there's very little restrictions that we impose on the directory. We just want to consume information.
One of the other features that we have had in the past is the ability for the admin to find fields. That does continue on. The cool thing is now is if you do have multiple directories involved, you can map those based on a directory, and because directories will have different attribute names and stuff, so we will go through and it will show you a list of the attributes available on the user object, and you can pick those as being an admin-defined field in GroupWise still. So that's still fully featured, and it is featured across multiple directories as well. So we can leverage more even than just our base set of attributes that we pull in. A couple other just really quick things to help in quick navigation and getting around quickly in the system. We've tried to provide two things that will hopefully help out quite a bit with that. Up on the main toolbar, you can see that we have a recent and a favorites pull down. So the recents will keep a track of, during this current session, the objects that I have accessed. And so you can quick link back and forth between those. And as you look at different objects, they'll get added to that recent list. And so you can just really quickly toggle back and forth between the objects that you spend a lot of time in. We also have the favorites. Currently, I don't have any favorites. This is a way to, if you spend a lot of time in certain objects, you can add them to the favorites list. So I can, stick this user in my favorites list, and his post office I can put in the favorites list just by clicking on the button, and we'll put a domain in there as well. And so now those objects now show up in your favorites list. That's totally customizable. And again, that list, the favorites list, will follow you, I believe, from session to session as you log in as that user. It's not cross administrators. The recent list is only for the current login session that you have. So the recent list gets refreshed each time that you log in again. One of our main goals, our main tasks with switching administration is to provide all the functionality that we had with Console 1. I think that we've done a really good job of that and actually made it a little easier to navigate around the system. If you knew where to find things in Console 1, I hope that it will be, even though the interface has changed significantly, I think it's going to be actually a lot easier to find that same information going forward. I don't think we're going to have a lot of people that are really lost in trying to navigate the system. Again, for things like client options are available as an option on the user, or we can go to the post office as the client options. We can go to the domain. Client options are there. Diagnostics, we have the same diagnostics available that show all the information we had before. Actually, we've added a couple more things, I believe, as well.
Display object as well.
Display object, I'm sorry. So display object works pretty similarly to what it did in Console 1. It's a great debug tool. The one difference is we do not, we had eDirectory information available. We just show the GroupWise dump of what we have for that record as well. One other thing that we still maintain as well it's a very helpful debug tool, especially for us, is this record enumerations where we can, by the different sorts or different indexes we have in the database, you can view what data is available for all those objects, for the different things. And then again, you can view the same kind of display object that we had in Console 1. So in terms of debug, those kind of things are very helpful. I think the best, for our own technical support people, the best thing that we have, though, is being able to run as an admin service. So it's going to make it possible for our NTS people to access customer sites live just through hitting their admin service, through their own UI, or hitting the admin service directly. And it's a great amount of flexibility, I think, that we haven't had in the past, where customers would have to send in databases and be analyzed. We now have the ability to hit them directly on site and get a more a live look at what their system is doing and what's going on in their system. Dean.
All right, we've got a handful of questions, Dave, that have come in across a variety of topics that may either be easy to answer or lead you into more demos. So we'll start out with a few of the softballs.
Please.
This is from Matthias. He's asking another certificate authority question. Is the certificate authority role fixed to an admin service, or is it easily movable?
It's always fixed to the admin service for the primary domain.
Excellent, thank you. Our friend Bobo Chung has a series of questions, a couple of them related to the audit log. First of all, for GUIA, POA, and MTA, are all of those viewable from the new admin console?
The log files?
The log files.
The log files themselves.
The agent logs, or getting into the agent interface.
Okay. This is a great interface that we have.
I'll show from the overview.
Okay. So from the overview page, and there's multiple ways to access this, we can, it gives you the status and
click on the green dot.
Okay, there we go. And it also does provide a link to get to the HTTP monitoring for that agent. Now, for the MTA and the POA here, I have not configured a username, an HTTP username and password yet, and so it's just like trying to access it from a regular browser. If I configure those, then the information that I have, I can actually perform tasks there. But the things that I still can do is I can view the log files directly, which is hopefully a little bit of a time saver. We can provide those shortcuts to get to these as well. If you have an admin name, if you have a name and password set on those, we provide them as well. And so I don't believe it prompts for them during the login.
It does. It pushes you over.
Okay.
In different tabs.
So you will get a prompt for those, but yeah.
So I think the answer to the question is it's not directly available in the admin interface, but we do provide you easy links to get to that information in the agent consoles.
Thank you. Somewhat of a related question. As I have delegated administrative rights to another administrator, can that other administrator modify the audit log?
The audit log, no. The audit log is generated by GW check. Is that the audit log that we're referring to?
I believe so, yes.
So they can, if they have rights to a post office, they can run an audit report, a manual audit report. Now with audit, there's not a lot of configuration that goes on there, and so running an audit report from here, from the post office screen, is basically the same thing as clicking the Run Audit Report from the post office information page. You'll get the same default settings. So if they have rights to the post office object, then they should be able to run all the audit reports.
But they can't modify any of the information. The information's culled from the actual live user data.
That's right.
Great, thank you. In a multi-post office scenario, can you delegate specific branch admin for branch offices only, and that branch admin can not create or modify or delete any account or configuration for the head post office?
Yes. Yes. So in the administrators tab, we have post office administrators and users. Adding a user here.
So let's go ahead and let's create another post office real quick, and then we can just log in and show this what you can see.
So to create a new post office, we'll just create a new quick post office on this page, and we'll just call branch PO. Let's do that. That's even branch PO, and we'll stick it somewhere close. Demo 1.1 branch PO, and I'm just going to stick with my local host because everything else is.
This is kind of a neat feature that we added for Windermere is if you enter a host name that is already shared by another agent on the system, it'll give you warnings about the ports that are in use, so it gives you the opportunity to easily choose non-conflicting ports.
And that is very helpful.
Probably mostly in testing or in demo environments, but so as we just created this post office, it didn't just create the object, it created the object, it created the database, and if we pop over to the overview page, you'll see that it started the post office. That's actually running now. We could add a user and log in, all done from the admin console there. So now if we go to a user, and let's show this the other way around. Let's go to a user rather than administrators. So let's grab J. Parker and go Objects, Administrator, and we can say Add. We can say add him as a post office administrator, and we'll put him as the administrator of branch PO. We'll save this, and then we'll log back in as J. Parker. And now as J. Parker goes to PO11, which would be, say, the head post office, you'll see that he doesn't get any options to create users. If he tries to edit a user here, the details will show up as read-only. He's not allowed to modify anything on the users. But if he goes into the branch PO, he gets the new button He can create new users, he can delete users, he can modify settings, but only on that particular post office. So long answer to a short question, yes, we do support that particular scenario.
Excellent, thank you. A couple of questions about the eDirectory objects, and some that I related to Active Directory as well, as this comes online. If you disable the login for a user in eDirectory or Active Directory, will GroupWise 2014 reflect that, or do you have to also disable it in the GroupWise admin console?
I believe that you would have to reflect that. I think what will happen, though, is if you disable the login and you're doing Ldap authentication, you will probably still get an authentication error then during login, and they won't be able to log in. But we don't directly synchronize over, I believe, the account disabled setting.
Okay. Thank you. And what happens to all of those objects that currently exist under GroupWise 8 or GroupWise 2012 in my directory when I upgrade to GroupWise 2014?
That's a really good question. So we are relying more heavily on the MTA synchronization than we have in the past. In the past, the MTA has always had the ability to synchronize information from eDirectory into GroupWise, but it's been pretty optional to configure that. During the upgrade process, we try and configure a directory object to set that up for the MTA to handle doing that synchronization. And if it's able to, then the MTA, as it syncs, it will actually then migrate it will continue that synchronization process and maintain that link with the eDirectory object and set the new attributes that we require for 2014 to manage that link going forward. So we go through a bit of a migration step. It may require some interaction by the user to configure the eDirectory object to begin with. But then once that happens, as the MTA does the sync, hopefully it'll be completely seamless.
To configure the Ldap?
Yes, the MTA, the eDirectory Ldap object. I didn't say that very well. And then as it does that, it will hopefully be completely seamless to the customer that upgrade has taken place and that synchronization will be maintained.
Okay.
I understood that question a little differently, and so I'll answer the question that I heard. I thought that was maybe referring to what happens to the existing GroupWise specific objects in a directory where we had extended the schema in the past and we had additional information there. And the answer is that we will continue to update those objects in the directory through a legacy sync process that happens anytime you touch one of those objects. However, any new objects that you create won't have, so for instance, we stored information about the MTA and the POA and domains and post offices in eDirectory. Any new objects that you create will only exist in the GroupWise database, but for the sake of backwards compatibility, if those objects previously existed, every time you touch that object, we'll kick off a background task that makes sure that that object stays up to date with all of the same attributes that were there previously.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Another type of an audit question, is there a tool or is there a tracking audit tool that monitors, audits, and logs all of the changes for all of the administrators that happen, so that I can go back and say what changed in the system and who changed it?
So we don't have an audit log. We do maintain the last changes, the last set of changes, and who changed it and when it was done and what domain they were connected to when it happened. We currently do not have a log for the admin. Well, I take it back now. We do actually in the admin service. We should be able to log that information.
So there is a way to, so by default, this isn't turned on because it generates a lot of chatter, but there is a way to tweak the login configuration so that it'll write every request made to the admin service and log the user ID, which endpoint, which would identify the object, and whether or not it was something that was being created, deleted, or modified. Now, what you wouldn't see with that is you wouldn't see what was modified. Like, you wouldn't see that they, say, changed the first name, but you would see that administrator Dean Lithgow modified the user object Dr. Hansen, and there is a way to enable that sort of login. But like I said, that's not turned on by default because of the amount of chatter that it generates in the log files.
Excellent. Vanessa asks, kind of an interesting question that may push you to a little bit more demo, Dave. What happens with all of the other maintenance tasks that happen on a domain or post office? Those things that in the past required maybe direct file access. How does that work in this new administrative model that you guys have shown?
So there's a couple of ways that those maintenance operations will be done, and it depends on the specific maintenance operation you're talking about. On the domain and post office, I'm gonna hurry and log back in again so that I have rights to show this. So on a domain object and a post office object, there is a maintenance tab. And for the admin service, there are some of the operations that are available directly still from the UI. These are more the operations that can be performed while the system is up and running, and it can easily be done without a lot of interruption to the system. There are some of these other operations, though, that we had in the past that are more, they were rare or not as common, I should say, to perform those. And so we've shown a little bit before the command line utility that we have, gwadmin-util, and that is going to be the place where we're going to handle some of these other. It will handle all the operations that the UI does, as well as some of the more uncommon tasks like the merge and release and things like that. And
so the four operations, the four maintenance operations that are only available from the command line are merge an external system, release a secondary domain, change a secondary domain into a primary domain, and sync primary with secondary. The four of those require simultaneous access to two databases, both kind of a source and a target, that would require you to set up, mount points to where the utility had access to both databases before you ran the tool.
So the command line util, it's kind of grown from that. It was initially just meant to handle those things, but we've added a lot of really nice little functionality in there too as well. That it just makes it convenient, and a lot of them are as well very useful in a scripting environment to be able to write a script and launch these kind of things as you'd like.
Somewhat related question to that is, are there new health check, system check processes and procedures that are available in GroupWise 2014?
I don't think we've extended any new functionality currently. Our main goal with 2014 was to be able to reach functional parity with Console 1, and so we've maintained all that functionality there, but we have not added any new maintenance system help things right now.
Okay, thank you. And Jonathan, all the documentation for GroupWise 2014 that is complete is available through the tech preview. So if you haven't registered for that, you can certainly do that and have access not only to the latest tech preview code, but also to the current documentation that is available for GroupWise 2014. So we appreciate your question on that. Now, what other things do you guys have to demo, or do you still want to do some questions? So I still got a handful here.
Well, I think we've hit the main thing. Should we do the questions first, or is there anything else?
No, I think that was the end of our script for the demo.
Okay.
All right, so these may be a little bit random and all over. I tried to consolidate them, but they came in too quickly. So now we're just going to kind of laundry list them right down the list. Frank asks, can you pull extra Ldap fields into the global address book from eDirectory and Active Directory?
Yes, actually, we did show that, but we'll pull it up again.
That was the
admin-defined
field.
That is available still. And it is done on a per directory basis. If I had multiple directories defined and add an Active Directory, eDirectory, I can configure those one by one, so objects that come from that Active Directory instance will pull in those fields. eDirectory will pull in the set that are defined for it. So that is still in place.
Okay, and two probably similar questions. This one I think you've answered, but very specific. What about phone number? If someone ever tries to create some integration with a unified communications product, can they bring in the phone number field from Ldap?
Which phone number do they want?
My guess is it'll be office phone number, cell phone number, home phone number.
Okay, those, and by default, those three always come in. We have base attributes. Those should be some of the base attributes that come in. But yes, they could pull those in with an admin-defined field if there were other phone numbers as well that they wanted to. I believe pager and fax are still included as base attributes too.
Okay. And this one, once again, very similar question. In the past, the attribute types that could be pulled in were restricted to string type. Is that still the case, or are there other types that can be pulled in via Ldap?
I believe with eDirectory we do support phone number is actually a different. It is a string, but it's defined as a different syntax. We do handle the telephone numbers, and I believe there's one other syntax type, but generally it is just the string attributes.
So you wouldn't say that in general things have significantly changed between GroupWise 2012, admin and user-defined fields, in 2014. They're still available and kind of available in a similar way.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is it possible to, Eric asked, is it possible to administer or administrate two GroupWise systems from one admin console, like one could do in console 1, logged into two different eDirectories, for example?
So the way, I didn't go over this very much at the start, the way the admin service runs is there is an instance of an admin service that runs for each database, basically. One per domain and post office. And so, yeah, if you have multiple systems, even running on the same box, they would have to be running with different admin ports to not conflict. But you can easily switch back and forth in the console. As you in the connected domain, this will show you a list of domains in your current system that have an admin service running that you can easily switch to. But if you want to switch to another system, you can easily log out and just specify the IP address and port for the second admin system and do a login on that. So it's a pretty easy switch.
Okay, fantastic. A couple of scripting questions, obviously from somebody who sets up a lot of systems. Can you script the generation of a POA and its properties without using the web console?
Yes.
And related, can you script the generation of an Ldap source for that PO?
Yes.
So Logan, hopefully you heard that and were able to get answers to those questions.
If he needs more specific details, that'd probably be easier to relate that information in an email. So if you want to contact Dean, and Dean can funnel that through.
All right.
The good thing is, again, since we're running with a REST admin service, everything that we have available here to do our administration is publicly available. So if they can issue a REST admin service, a RESTful call, they can script it pretty much.
So Logan did jump in. He says yes, he felt like he got the answer he wanted, so appreciate that. I think we showed this, but maybe we went too fast or Paulo didn't see it. But where can we see the GUIA or the PO logs? Can you show us that again?
Sure. A couple of ways to get to them. The super easy way is just on the overview page. It has a list of all the agents that are running, and so if I want to look at the log for the PO1, and I click on the status button if it's up and running, it will provide a link to the HTTP page for the agent. And once I go through and handle all that, it then takes me to the HTTP monitoring page that we have had in the past. It's just you've had to run it. You've had to know where all the information is to be able to get to it. From there, you can view a list of log files. And depending, we still only have one log file on this POA, we can go ahead and view that log. And again, if you've set up the HTTP username and password for these agents, there are other options available. It's just like the regular HTTP monitoring page, and you can perform underneath the configuration. There are separate tasks and things that you can perform from this UI directly against the agent.
All right, thanks. We are winding down, but we do have a couple more questions. One of related to the IDM driver from Aaron. Does the IDM driver allow customization of the list of attributes sent from IDM to GroupWise as can be done with the prior version?
Yes.
Yes. We expect very similar functionality between the old IDM driver and the new one, which will be a requirement in 2014 that you are using the GroupWise 2014 IDM driver.
And the main reason with that is because the new IDM driver is the biggest changes. Instead of having to map directly to the domain database, it's going to talk to the admin service as well. And so the big change is the transportation of the data. And so where you put your IDM driver now, it's a lot more flexible. It can be anywhere, and it just has to be able to hit the admin service. In terms of the configuration and the settings, it should be able to support everything the previous driver did.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Can someone rename a user and associate them with a different user in the Ldap directory?
Yes.
Yes, right. I can rename a user and then I can associate him from one directory to another directory, I guess is the question.
So this last user that I wish I had another directory set up. This last user that I set up, I can, the same way I did the associate, now that he is associated, the menu entries changed a little bit and I can disassociate that user. And that's going to remove his settings or his ties. And he looks like a standalone user right now. And then going back in, I can do an associate. I could pick a different directory and a different user and basically sync it up with a different object altogether.
Okay, great. Mark asked, when will the new IDM driver be available? And then maybe just for completeness, I did get a question of what does IDM mean? And so I'll voice that here. The IDM driver, what we refer to with that acronym, is the NetIQ Identity Manager driver. And that is available from the NetIQ business unit. And it is something that is available to synchronize data between directories and applications. And in this case, it's between directories and GroupWise. And it's a very specific driver for that to synchronize and keep directory information in sync between those two repositories.
The difference between the IDM driver and the sync that GroupWise would do over the Ldap connection is that the IDM driver is event-driven. So as an event is triggered in the source directory, it immediately generates a change that updates the GroupWise system, whereas the GroupWise Ldap sync that you might otherwise have configured is poll-driven. You know, you can configure your synchronization process to happen once a day or every several hours to go check it for changes in the directory and update the GroupWise database.
The IDM driver also has the flexibility of being configurable in terms of provisioning objects from eDirectory into GroupWise as well. So it can actually handle provisioning based on criteria. You can assign it to different post offices and groups and things like that. So it's a great provisioning, an automatic provisioning tool.
Okay, excellent.
And I believe you touched on the availability will be our our release time or shortly after, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Latest, we expect the GroupWise 2014 IBM driver to be within 30 days of the availability of GroupWise 2014, but the internal target is to make that available simultaneously. It would just depend on how well the beta goes and if there are any significant issues regarding real-world deployments that bubble up during that. We don't foresee anything there, but we have given ourselves a little bit of a cushion on that. And then the last question that I have so far is, are the docs for the REST interface available already, and where could I find those?
So the documentation is actually embedded kind of directly into the product. If you go to, instead of gwadmin-console, to gwadmin-service, it'll take you to this page here, which allows you to browse through all of the various endpoints that you can hit in the system, as well as being able to click through and get kind of an idea of what methods are available and where appropriate, what parameters are necessary to send along. That's also available in a machine-readable format as a WADL file, which is a big XML document that describes all of the various endpoints.
Two other things going along with that too. We do have some sample code that we will be shipping as well. I believe it's targeting mostly Java right now in terms of doing custom applications. And we have also talked with some partners about hosting a website where we could share solutions on how to do custom programming against the admin service. And I don't have any more details than that right now, but I know that that has been discussed, and I believe it is still in the works.
And for those who are interested, continue to watch the GroupWise blog. That's certainly a place where we'll talk about that and announce that in our Cool Solutions area. Thank you, Dave and Dan. I think that concludes our questions. If there's anybody on the call who continues to have questions or has additional requests for information, they can please contact me directly. This is Dean Lithgow. You can find me on a couple of different spots. deanlithgow@novell.com is my direct email address, or you can find me via the GroupWise blog at novell.com/gwblog. It's a great way to not only contact me, but also participate in the GroupWise community and share your questions and the answers in a more public format. At this time, that concludes our demo, and I'm going to pass back the time back to Jeff, and he will wrap up our webinar for today.
Guys, thanks very much. I very much appreciate the time you took to go through that. So as you can see, folks, we're just having to arbitrarily cut off time here. We could go for days and weeks covering the aspects and the features and the functions of GroupWise, as well as the new stuff in GroupWise 2014. There's just so much stuff to cover here, and this is just a slice of that pie. So want to thank you for your time and attention and your very verbose questions. They were excellent. As I mentioned, this is being recorded. I will send out a communication next week to everyone who has registered for this webinar, so that's everybody on the phone right now. You guys will get that communication letting you know where you can go to access those recordings, where you can go to access the presentations that Dean led with earlier in the webinar. And then we also had a couple of other references. A Millikan University spreadsheet was mentioned earlier, and I'll provide a link to where you can access that, as well as a document of the questions and answers that were asked in the chat. A lot of good stuff there, a lot of additional information that would be probably good for you to have, if nothing else, is just for a reference to look on and search for at a future time. So with that, I'll give the rest of the day back to you. Have a great weekend. Congratulations, Canada, and we will call it in for the Solution Day. Thanks.